Good. So welcome everybody again. As you can see, I am on Google. So what we're going to do first is we're going to download one thing called Anaconda Navigator. Okay, Anaconda Navigator. Download best. And once you have it, you need to download it and install it into your computer. So just click on download. And depending on what kind of system you have, if you have Linux or MacOS or Windows, depending on your graphical card, you need to install a different one. Just install the 3.8 version. This is the latest. Okay. So once you have done it, you will get something like this. Something like this in your computer once you install the program. Okay. And you see there, you have already, with Anaconda Navigator, you have installed a Jupyter Lab, Notebook Jupyter, and PyQt console. You have R, which we have seen in other semesters. You have also Spider, which is a scientific Python developer environment. You have a visualization tool, multidimensional data visualization. You have Orange. You have VS Code and stuff. So we will be using, we have seen in the past R Studio, okay, which we will not be using now. We will be using this Jupyter Notebook, okay? So you click of launch, and when you click here of launch, then you will get something like this. Wait a minute. You will get something like this. Okay. No. You get something like, wait a minute. You get something like this. Where am I? Yeah. So you get something basically like this. And you see there is here a list of applications, okay? And then you need to click here of new, and then you go and click on Python 3, create a new notebook with Python 3, okay? So once you click there, then you will be prompted to a Jupyter, you will be prompted to a Jupyter window like this, okay? So, and now we have, once you've done it, and I don't need you to do it now, just follow the class, okay? You can repeat the whole process later on at home, because as I said, this is going to be recorded, so you can go through it later on. Once you've done it, we are in Python, okay? So, and we will use Python, specifically Python 3, to analyze supplier data sets, basically, okay? So this lecture is going to be about, excuse me, it's going to be about analyzing data sets and that are coming from suppliers to get information from the suppliers in order to manage them. This is our main goal. And for that, we need to know how to access the data. We need to know how to download the data. We need to know how to represent graphically the data, and so on and so forth. So we will go step by step, watching or seeing some examples that help us grow in our knowledge. The exam, okay, the exam will be code, okay, basically. Also some theory and stuff, but will be basically code. So you need to learn from day one how to perform these commands in the computer. So it's not gonna be enough to recognize the code and know what it does, as in the past. You are now in the last semester of your studies. Next year you're gonna be in a company working. So I am going to press you hard. Okay, so you need to be learning, not only recognizing, but also learning how to do it. I hope this is clear. Ich wiederhole es auf Deutsch. Das Semester oder die Prüfung hier wird überwiegend sein oder wird einen Schwerpunkt haben auf dem Code. Ihr müsst codieren lernen. Diese Befehle, die wir jetzt eingeben, müsst ihr lernen. Der Grund ist, dass nächstes Jahr seid ihr schon in einem Unternehmen und da müsst ihr das schon können. Es reicht nicht, wenn ihr den Code wieder erkennt und ein bisschen weiß, worum es geht. Nein, sondern es geht darum, dass ihr das selber macht. Okay, selber tippt. Deshalb gebe ich euch auch den Skript, weil es geht darum, dass ihr alleine das wieder nachmacht und zwar ohne jegliche Hilfe. Die Prüfung ist auch nicht, findet nicht statt in einem Rechner. The exam is not going to take place on a computer, so the exam is just on a piece of paper, and I will give you some code and some blank spaces, and you need to fill the blank spaces. Okay? So, is it clear? Fragen? Chat? Chat is that? Habt ihr Fragen? Jemand Fragen? Hallo? Nein? Na gut. Gut, wenn ihr da seid auf Jupyter, den Jupyter Notebook, dann installieren wir sogenannte Pakete. Okay? Pakete und das erste Paket ist Seaborn. Dafür müsst ihr Ausrufezeichen pip install schreiben, Seaborn as SNS. Das heißt, wir installieren das Paket Seaborn und wir nennen es SNS. Eine Abkürzung. Und dann drückt ihr, wenn ihr das gemacht habt, drückt ihr bitte auf Shift und Enter. Shift und Enter. Er sagt, das Ding ist bereits, requirement is already satisfied. So, weil I have already installed Seaborn in the past. Seaborn is going to be one program within Python, a so-called package that is going to help us represent data sets graphically. So once I have installed it, I need to import it. We need to import the package. So, das ist immer das Gleiche. Ich drücke auf Enter zweimal und dann sage ich Import Seaborn as SNS. Okay, Shift Enter, immer das gleiche. Hier am Ende, damit ich ich schreibe das Shift Enter dann ein paar Mal, aber danach, so at the end of each line, you need to write Shift Enter. You need to press Shift Enter so that the order or the line is executed. Okay. Then we are going to load a data set called anscom. Okay, and in order to do that, we say anscom equals SNS. SNS is seaborn. Okay. Dot load dataset anscom. Okay, das ist jetzt it's a dataset that is in the package. And then I press again Shift Enter. And as long as I don't get an error, everything goes fine. So now I say print anscom. And so we have some data. Okay, you see 3 rows. One is the data set type, 1, 2, 3, 4 in Roman letters. Then I have X and then I have Y. Okay. Ich sehe eine Frage hier im Chat. Warte.
Ja, was sind das für Daten oder ist es irrelevant?
Ja, das sind die Daten sind Daten in einem Dataset. Okay, wir werden unzählige Datensätze uns holen sozusagen und die Daten sind jetzt von einem Datenbank. Okay, das sind jetzt keine relevanten Daten. Es ist nur ein Beispiel, damit wir ein bisschen spielen. Okay. Ich kriege hier eine Frage, ob es ähnlich ist wie SAP ERP. Gut, nein, es ist nicht ähnlich wie SAP ERP. SAP ERP ist eine Oberfläche. Wir gehen hier tiefer. Python ermöglicht tiefere Analysen als SAP ERP. SAP ERP gibt einem schon die Datenstrukturen. Mit Python können wir in den Datenstrukturen hinein. SAP ERP ist eine anwendungsorientierte Plattform, die wir lernen codieren. Okay. Wir lernen hier eine Ebene tiefer in diesem Umfeld, in dieser Umgebung. Es ist nicht es ist keine Anwendungsvorlesung sozusagen, damit ihr kurz irgendwie was lernt anzuwenden, sondern ich gebe euch hier Werkzeuge. Wenn ihr vertieft, dann seid ihr in der Lage, viel tiefer reinzugehen als ein SAP-Anwender. So this is not SAP ERP, which is just a user platform. We are going here deeper with Python. Rakshini, ist die Frage beantwortet?
Ja, ist beantwortet, danke.
Okay, ja, gerne. Also, please do not write me on private, just write me for everybody so that everybody sees the questions, okay? So once we have all the data uploaded, okay, we have loaded the data. We go and say dataset 1 equals anscom square anscom square again, data set, and then double equal 1. So here I am getting myself a subset of the data, and then I need to go and say pip install, I think it's called matplotlib. Wait a minute. Yeah, install matplotlib, which is something that I need for a graphic representation. It's another package. And I said import matplotlib.pyplot as plt. And once I have that, I can call the plot plt.plot. You see this plt is this plt, okay? It's just a short name for matplotlib.pyplot so that I don't need to write it every time, okay? Pyplot, I want to plot the data set 1, the column called X, and data set 1, column called Epsilon. And now let's see if I have not made any mistake, what happens. Okay, apparently I have done a mistake. This happens. I don't mind being because this is going to happen to you all the time. Okay. Yeah. So I had made a mistake here. I was calling. I put an I low, and I should have put an I big, because the data set 1 is taking the first 10 data sets. So everything that has in the column data set a 1 Römisch 1, I don't know how to say it in English, and Roman number 1 is taking all the data, all the first 11 data sets that are in Anscombe and have a 1 in the data set column. So these are the data, okay? So if I do another type of plot, let's say I put the same, and these are the data that have the first 10 data sets. If I say, okay, let's do that, and put me instead of a line, a 2D line, put me points for each data. So you see what I get is all these data that have a first Roman letter here. The first 11 data sets are displayed in a graphic. Okay. So now you have an exercise to do. You can do it later. Please represent following data sets graphically. I have prepared that for you, so just, okay. So these data set, subscore 2 are all the data with a Roman 2, subscore 3 are all the data with a Roman 3, and so on, okay? So please represent all the data, these data sets, as graphics. Any questions so far? Hello? Any questions? I repeat what we have done. We have gone to Anaconda Navigator. We have downloaded it, installed it. We have gone to Jupyter Notebook, and we have installed some packages. So we have opened a Jupyter Notebook. We installed Seaborn as SNS. We upload one dummy data set. We print it to represent it. We have the first data set, a subset of the data set represented here. Then we install Matplotlib as a package that helps us represent graphically stuff. We import it so that we upload it. We import a PyPlot library, and we represent the data set one, the first X column, and the second Y column. First, we represent it as a line. This doesn't make much sense. Then we represent it as points, okay? And at home, I want you to take these data sets and represent them accordingly. All right? Okay, no questions.
Ja,
So
kurz zum Verständnis, ist doch eigentlich jetzt so ähnlich wie R, oder? Was ist da der gravierende Unterschied? So, also für mich sieht es relativ ähnlich aus.
Ja, es ist da eine andere Sprache. R ist mehr für Statistik, okay, aufgebaut worden. Python hat mehr Macht in Anführungsstrichen für die numerische Bearbeitung von großen Datenmengen. In die Zukunft, wenn ihr mit Lieferanten, mit Industriedaten generell umgeht, R ist meistens nicht genug. Und R ist gut, um die Statistik halt anzupacken, aber grundsätzlich in einem Jobinterview, wenn ihr sagt, ihr könnt Python, dann habt ihr deutlich mehr Möglichkeiten, einen Job zu kriegen. Es ist einfach mehr gefragt auf dem Markt. Deshalb wähle ich das aus. Ist deine Frage beantwortet, Marc?
Ja, passt soweit.
Okay, dann machen wir eine Pause in 10 Minuten ungefähr. In 10 minutes, I will send you another invitation for the next round. Okay? In 10 minutes, bye. So we continue now, and we are going to go further in detail with graphical representation of statistical data sets. Okay. And for that, I will upload another data set. You see is the same as before, called tips. Okay, basically, if I say print tips.head, okay, head helps us helps us represent the first 5 data sets. I get this list, okay? I only represent the first 5 because I put head on it. You see the total bill. Well, people go to a restaurant and they pay, but the customer number 0 pays $16.99, gives a tip of 101. It's a female, it's non-smoker, the day is a Sunday, the time of the day is a dinner, and there were 2 people. Okay, so you can imagine, you can just, this is very easy, okay? This is just an example of it, it's very easy. This is customer number 1 that goes into a shoe store and buys some shoes for $16.99, leaves 101, 1.01 as a tip. Is a female, buys some blue shoes, and so we have here a certain set of data that could be the data of a supplier or customers, okay? So it's just data, it's the same. We learned with this easy example so that later on we can build on to higher complexity, okay? So I try to go step by step. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna represent a histogram of one variable. And in order to do so, first we need to set up a PLT figure. This is what is called a Platzholder in German. So we need to reserve some memory for a figure, okay? This is basically what we do. Then we tell him our access is, we're gonna add some access, add subplot 1, so this means we are only going to have one figure. Our subplot is just going to be one figure, 1, 1, 1. Then I am going to tell him that this is going to be a histogram, and the data are going to be taken from tips on total bill. So I am going to take the data from the first column called total bill in the tips data set. And you're gonna make me please 10 groups, 10 columns of the histogram. Okay, if I press Shift Enter now, he will deploy something like that. But this is not very pretty because I don't have the access or anything like that supplied. For this reason, I need to add some more information. I want a title, access 1, set title to histogram of total bill. And I need to have a set X label. So the label, die Beschriftung of the X axis is going to be frequency. And the label axis 1 set Y label is going to be total bill. And then please show me the figure. If I press now Shift Enter, the subplot has changed and now it looks a little bit more pretty. Okay, I have my overall title, histogram of total bill. I have the frequency, I have the total bill on the X and Y axis, and I have 10 bins, okay? 10 bins means 10 columns, 10 groups of data sets. If I say I need, instead of 10 bins, I need more granularity. I need 50 bins. It will take a little bit longer, but he will represent 50 bins. If I say, give me, I don't know, 100 beans, he'll give me 100 beans, okay? And so on and so forth. At some point, I don't get more granularity than that, but anyway, this is a way to represent a histogram in Python. If it comes to an exam and I give you this figure, okay, I give you the figure, I give you just a screenshot of the histogram, and then I tell you, please give me the code to represent this figure. And you need to know the code. Is that clear? So you need to learn the code. My recommendation is that you just try to type this without looking at the script, because this is going to be your best test. Any question how to represent a histogram of one variable given a data set? Hello? No? You cool? All right. Well then, let's continue with two variables. Scatter plot. Two variables. And the logic is always the same. So first, I need to reserve some memory. So this is a placeholder. Then I need to tell him what I want to do. Axis 1 equals scatter underscore plot add subplot 111. This means that I want only one figure represented. I can change this. This you can try to change it, so it will understand you want to represent more than one graphic in the figure, so he will distribute it as a little matrix. Axis 1 dot scatter tips. Now I tell him where I want the data from. So I want the data from the data set tips, the column total bill, and because I have two variables, the second variable is going to be the amount of the tip. So from the data set tips, I take the first variable, the total bill, the first column, okay, here, the first column, and then I take the second column from the data set tip, I take the second column tip, and I take the amount of the tip. And I want to represent these two variables as a scatter plot. Axis 1 dot, well, if I do it now, if I would do this, I would get something like this, okay? So this is a scatter plot. You see on the x-axis, I have the total bill. On the y axis, I have a tip. So it is a sort of a linear relationship. The more I pay for the bill in the restaurant, the more I give as a tip. Okay, this is sort of the rule in the US. But this is not pretty, so I want to set some title of the diagram as scatter plot of total bill versus tip. I want to set also a title, an X label. The X label is the total bill. X is 1, set Y label. The Y label is the tip, and then I just say, show me scatter plot. I pressed Shift Enter. Always when I want to execute, Shift plus Enter. And then I get this. Okay, so this is a scatter plot. I have the, first I have reserved some place for the memory. Then I tell him add a scatter plot. Previously I told him add a histogram. Now I tell him add a scatter plot. In this scatter plot, I want to take the data from tips total bill and tips tip, and then just set the titles, make it pretty, and show. So you have the scatter plot with the points. You have the title on top. You have the total bill on the x-axis. You have the tip on the y-axis. Any questions? Any questions? Please. No questions? Okay, then I continue. So we have now represented continuous variables, so numbers against numbers. Okay, the total bill is a number and the tip is a number, so I can represent it as a scatter plot. But now imagine I want to represent the total amount of tip against the sex, okay? Imagine again that I have here the amount of revenue, Umsatz, against a supplier, okay? And I have here Bosch, Siemens, and so on. So different categorical data sets. Here I have numbers, and here I have some classes. So I cannot do this kind of representation. I need something called a box plot, okay? To represent how much does each sex pay as a tip. Do women give more tips as men, for instance? So box plots are used to represent a discrete variable against a continuous variable. So, and in order to represent a box plot, is basically the same logic. Box plot equals PLT figure. So first I reserve some memory. For the figure. Then I tell him I want to have one figure represented. Then I want to add a box plot. And in order to add a box plot, I need to tell him what's in the, where are the arguments of the box plot. We need more than one input. So here we need to be careful. We hold tips. And we need more than one input, as I said. So we're going to take one input is a sex is equal to female. So in tips, the argument sex equals female, and that you're going to represent me that against tip. Okay, and then I go again and I say in tips, represent me tips. So I want the argument sex equals male, and I want the tip. And I want you to give me some labels. Labels equal female, comma, male. Okay, if I would press now Shift Enter, I have here a mistake. Subplot. So here I am missing a B, and I make it on purpose that I let you see all the mistakes, but because this will happen a lot while you are working, so just don't get nervous, okay? Just stay calm and try to find out where you mistyped. So if I would just print this, I would get this sort of representation. This is a box plot representing on the left the females. So this here, females, and on the y-axis is the amount of tip that they gave. They're represented by the box. The little square here is the lower bound is 25%, 25 percentile. Then the 50 percentile, 75 percentile, and then the 90 percentile on top. And then the outliers are the points. Okay, so this is a box plot representation. You should know that already. And the same thing for the male. And the thing is that I want to represent this a little bit more pretty. So I want the x-axis, and I want to set an x label with sex, and x is 1. I want to set the y label, and the y label is going to be the tip. And then I want to set the axis 1 set title, box plot of tips by sex or something. And then box plot dot show, Shift Enter. And now it's a little bit more clear what I get. And now I get the whole representation of the titles, the X label and the Y label. Okay. So now we know how to represent two variables, even if they are not continuous, if they are not only numbers, if they are discrete. Okay. So just classes, just like imagine instead of saying female, I would have supplier 1, supplier 2, supplier 3, whatever. Okay. So does it make sense? Any questions?
So do capital letters matter in the codes?
Yes, 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 they are. You will notice that if you write, let me do an example. Okay, so I don't know who's asking. Who's asking?
Roman.
Roman. Hi, Roman. So just if I write here X big, okay, then I get a mistake, and it's showing me. Okay, see, it's showing me this this arrow is showing me I have a mistake here. Okay, access subplot object has no attribute set X label big. So capital letters do matter.
All right, okay, thanks.
All right, cool. Any more questions? More questions, please? So you have another exercise to do, please. Represent several box plots. Smoker daytime size. Tip versus smoker time day okay, sorry. If you don't want it to be understood as you need to write that symbol, the Raute-Taste, so that he understands it's not something that you want him to compile. All right. Any questions? Any questions, please? Gut. Dann, wenn keine Fragen kommen, if there are no questions, then we're going to learn how to represent multivariate data sets. So more than one variable in one plot. In order to do so, we are going to recode the sex variable to numbers. So female is going to be 0 and male is going to be 1. In order to do so, we need to define a recode function. Definition, recode sex. Take the sex and then double point if sex equals female, return 0. Else, return 1. Double equal. So, here, double equal. So now I have defined this function, and now I say, please apply the function recode sex to tips, so that I can color it. I can color the apply recode sex. So now I have tips head. If I say print tips head, I will see a different, a slight difference. So you see here, sex color. I have a new variable, which is sex color If it was female, I have a 0, and if it is male, I have a 1. Okay, this is going to help me represent a scatter plot with colors. So in order to do so, I'm going to be a little bit faster now. I represent the scatter figure as before. Okay, this we have done already. And I say axis 1 dot scatter. X is tips, total bill. So I want to do a scatter plot with colors to represent more than one variable. Tips is tips, sorry. Tip, so I get the second variable. Then I set the size of the points in the scatter plot. The size of the tip times 10. And then the color. Color tips is the sex color. I want to give it an alpha, which is just the transparency set, 0.4. If I now press Shift Enter, we'll deliver something like this. So you see the x-axis is the total bill as we had before. The tip is the tip. Then we have the size of the points, which is going to be the size of the people at the table, and then the color is the sex color that we have recoded before. Previously, we were not able to do that because of the variable. But if you represent the color as numbers, then you can do this. Okay. This information is the same, or this would be the same program that you just would need to write if you were analyzing suppliers. And your supplier number 1, 2, 3, if you have, instead of female, you have Bosch, instead of male, you have Siemens, and so on, Daimler, whatever. You just need to recode it just as we did, and represent your beautiful data set as we have it. I don't repeat the same because it's just the set title and the set X label and so on is the same as before. So that is just a pretty representation. Anyway, do you have any question? All right. No questions? Hello? No questions? Well, we make a little pause now, and I'll contact you in 5 minutes or 7 minutes. Bye-bye. We continue now by representing of a density plot with an histogram. Mark, maybe you should turn off your camera. Thank you. So in order to represent a histogram with a density plot, which you already know from statistics, we need to do 2 subplots. Okay, one is the histogram, and one is the density plot. Okay, that's why we reserve place for two subplots, histogram and AX. So AX is SNS dot this plot from tips. And where do I get the data? From total bill. All right. And then I set the title, total bill histogram with density plot. plt.show, and then just shift plus enter. And then I get that representation. Okay, the total bill and the density plot, which is this the histogram, which is the same as before, with this density plot, which is the curve being represented. Is that cool? I can do exactly the same, but let's say I don't want the histogram. And I copy the code. Then I say histogram false. Okay. So I don't get the histogram. And I just get the density plot, which is the curve. Questions? All right, you cool? Great. Well then, I can also represent a bar plot, which is, let's say I want to know how often I have certain days of the week given tips. Okay, how often I get a tip on what day of the week. Is it more on Fridays or Saturdays or Thursdays, or what day of the day is being more tipped? I can be interested on that when analyzing data sets. Suppliers, on what days are they supplying more? Okay, AX, SNS dot count plot. I look at the day, and the data is the tips. And then I set a title. Then I set a label. Sorry, day of the week. And I set a Y label as well. Frequency. And then I go and say plt.show. I click on Shift Enter, and then I get the days of the week, how often they happen. Any questions? Okay. I can also represent a regression with scatter plot, which is basically it's a linear regression, which you already know from Statistical, I hope. So again, I need to do I need to reserve some space for the two representations in AX equals SNS for seaborne, and then regression plot, which is where I tell him that I want a regression of the total bill, and the Y is the tip, okay? And data I get from tips. If I do that, only do that, I get this, okay? Representation. I can go into more detail by giving him explicitly where the data set or what is the name of the data set and so on and so forth. I don't repeat it. I just copy paste it because I have it. Okay, so here we see that we have a linear regression and that usually the total bill increases with, the tip increases with the total bill, okay? And so I get here the linear regression deployed to me with 2 lines of code. And this is very cool. I can also represent a joint plot, which is a scatter plot and a density plot on 2 dimensions. Scatter and histogram in 2 dimensions. And this is very cool. So as you see, generally, this is way more powerful than whatever Excel or whatever other tool that you're using as of today. I cannot stress it enough, strongly recommend that you get into it as soon as possible, okay? So we define joint as an SNS plot, which is called joint plot. And X is the total bill. And the way to learn this is by tipping, okay? So you need to tip yourself. Do not copy paste the, wie ihr lernt hier ist durch das Tippen von dem Code, nicht Copy-Paste machen, okay? Nicht einfach kopieren und einfügen, weil dann lernt ihr nichts. Joint set axis. Well, if I do this, I already get something. See, so I get the total bill against the tip. I get the scatter plot, the points, but I also get the histogram of each of the variables, which is very cool. Okay, I just can give it some more information into the graphic, but this is just making it pretty. Okay, the real stuff is happening. It's happening in the first line. Okay, and to make it even more cool, we can represent these points not as a points, just points, but we can represent it as a density plot in terms of a hex bin, okay, with hexagons. Hex bin 2-dimensional plot. And this is just called hex bin equals SNS dot joint plot. Okay. And X is called total bill. Y is called tip. And the data is equals tips. Okay. And then now here I tell him what kind of data I want to have a hex bin. If I press Shift Enter now, then I get this. So you see, the darker it gets, the more points there are. So it's sort of a density plot. I can do again the same as before by adding some pretty information about the graphic, which you will need to write down in the exam, okay? Positional error. What is going on here? Okay, so you get that. All right. And we can also make a density plot to finish. Let's say this is the last kind of plot we're going to see today. Two-dimensional density plot. And in order to do so, we represent two subplots, KDA, AX PLT dot subplot. Okay. And AX equals SNS, KDA. KDA plot is something using a kernel for the density plot, which is nothing but making whatever we've seen in the hex bin continuous. Total bill, comma, data 2 equals tips from tip, comma, shade equals true. And then I press Shift Enter and I get something like that, okay, which is sort of a shadowed representation of the data. I can again add some information on the thing to make it pretty, but this is just making it pretty. Okay. So any questions?
Was sagt es jetzt aus, dieses Schaubild?
Das letzte?
Ja, genau.
Das letzte ist eine Dichte der Frequenz, wie oft man einen Tipp gibt, abhängig von dem gesamten Rechnungsbetrag. Man sieht da zum Beispiel ungefähr bei 10 Euro Totalbetrag, man gibt öfters 2 Euro Tipp, okay? Da ist am dunkelsten. Genauso wie wenn man in den Hexpin reingeht, ist genau das gleiche. Hier ist am dunkelsten bei 10,2. Und genauso wie hier ist eigentlich immer die gleiche Darstellung, nur mit anderen Graphen. Ist die Frage beantwortet?
Ja.
Okay. Hat jemand noch Fragen? Hallo? Jemand noch Fragen? Gut, glaube ich, ist halt genug für heute. Wir haben, ich werde euch diese Unterlagen zuschicken per E-Mail, okay? Alle Videos werden hochgeladen oder das Video von dieser Vorlesung wird zusammengefügt und hochgeladen auf www.prof4.com. Und den PDF kriegt ihr zugeschickt, damit ihr das nachtippt. Meine dringende Empfehlung ist, macht bitte den Code nach, okay? Und setze die Übungen um, weil darum wird es gehen in die Prüfung. Please repeat the whole code, tipping yourself. You will see that you have problems, that you will make mistakes. This is the way to learn, okay? And please do the exercises because this is what the exam is going to be about. Okay? I hope you enjoyed the first lecture. Prepare for some more next week. We will go deeper into data analysis and how to get data from Yahoo or from Facebook and from other databases, and this will be important for your future. So there's one question here. Ja, okay, danke auch. Hat jemand Fragen? Alles klar. Dann bleib gesund und bitte mach mit, weil das bringt uns, beziehungsweise bringt euch echt näher zu einem Job am Arbeitsmarkt. Servus. Ciao.